Hello, welcome to the Self Learning Platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we start Unit 5, Niccolò Machiavelli. Let us first have introduction about the unit. Many forces shattered the ideal of a monolithic united Christian order. The growth of commerce made possible by economic development, the growth of cities, the rise of the printing press, the changeover from a barter economy to money and banking, new scientific and geographical discoveries, emergence of centralized states with a distinctive national language, a new respect for scientific explorations, crystallization of humanistic philosophy, demographic changes, and the rise of a secular order were some of the key determining forces. The emergence of universities ended the monopoly of the church over education, and with increasing literacy and the revival of human spirit during the Renaissance, individualism and humanism came to the forefront. Beckett remarked that the core of the Renaissance was the new man with prime concern of glory and fame, replacing religious faith and asceticism with self realization and the joy of living. Lasky, commenting on this extraordinary change, asserted that the entire Renaissance was in the writing of Machiavelli, who portrayed the new character of the state by comprehending the intricacies of statecraft in which decisions reflected the political compulsions rather than religious percepts and what ought to be. Machiavelli is the father of political realism with a primacy to the real world of politics. Now let us discuss Machiavelli, a child of his time. Born in the year 1469 in Florence, Italy, Machiavelli belonged to an affluent family and was well educated for a public career. At a young age, he attained one of the higher posts in the government of Florence. Later, he was sent on a diplomatic mission to several foreign countries where he acquired first-hand experience of political and diplomatic matters. However, political upheavals in the Florentine Republic caused the fall in the career of Machiavelli in 1513, and he was even put to a year's imprisonment. He was released from prison by the influence of his political friends on condition that he would retire from political life and refrain from all political activities. It was during this period of forced retirement that he induced his most memorable literary work, out of which The Prince and the Discourses on the First 10 books of Titus Livius stand out most prominently. Their contents spell out his political thought and earned him notoriety such as indifference to the use of immoral means to achieve political purposes, and the belief that government depended largely on force and craft. His writings are mainly influenced by the then prevailing situation, which half the time was the battleground of conspirators and ambitious politicians, local as well as foreign. The public leaders were activated more by selfish motive than by public interest. Public morality was very low, and papal authority in Italy constituted greatly towards political degradation. Popes were opposed to the unification of Italy, which was divided into five states, with Kingdom of Naples in the south, the Duchy of Milan in northwest, the aristocratic Republic of Venice in the northeast, and the Republic of Florence and the Papal State in the center. The Catholic Church and the clergy of Machiavelli's time wanted to maintain a shadow of their spiritual power over the whole of Italy, which left Italy in a state of arrested development. There was no power which appeared great enough to unite the whole of Italian peninsula. Italians suffered all the degradation and oppression of the worst type of tyranny, and the land became a prey to the French, Spanish, and the Germans. And unlike other European countries, none of the rulers of Italian states was able to consolidate the whole of the Italy under their sway. The political situation in Italy was embarrassingly complex and depressing, and Machiavelli, as a patriotic Italian, could not help being overwhelmingly moved by that. Securing the independence of Italy and restoring prosperity of its cities became a master passion with him. The unification of the entire country under one nation monarch on the model of France and Spain was the ideal for Machiavelli, which particularly inspired him. If the rotten politics of Italy affected his thought, he was also influenced by the growing spirit of Renaissance, which impelled men to re examine things from other than the clerical point of view. Being the chief exponent of this school of thought, Machiavelli, according to Dunning, stood on the borderline between the Middle Ages and the modern ages. He ushered in the modern age by writing politics of the vassalage of religion. The next point is methods of Machiavelli's study. As to the spiritual ascendancy of Machiavelli, the great Greek philosopher Aristotle held his imagination. Machiavelli quietly put aside the church scriptures, the teaching of church fathers, and the conflict for supremacy between the church and the state. He believed that human nature and therefore human problems were almost the same at all times and places, and so the best way of enlightening the present, according to him, was possible with the help of the past. Thus, Machiavelli's methods, like that of Aristotle, was historical, but it was more so in appearance than in substance and reality. He was more concerned with the actual working of governmental machinery than the abstract principles of constitution. A realist in politics, his writings expound a theory of the art of government rather than a theory of state. The actual source of his speculation was the interest he felt in the men and conditions of his own time. He was an accurate observer and acute analyst of the prevailing circumstances. He therefore adopted a form and method of political philosophy which ignored completely the scholastic and juridistic ideals. He adopted the ancient Greek Roman philosophy because the Romans had established a well organized empire which the Greeks could not, which led him to perceive the true relation between history and politics, and it is from history that he drew his conclusions as political truths. His conclusions were reached empirically based on common sense and shrewd political foresight. According to Sabine, he used history exactly as he used his own observation to illustrate or support a conclusion that he had reached without reference to history. He was a political realist, and like Aristotle, he amassed historical facts to overwhelm readers. But his political writings belong less to political theory than to the class of diplomatic literature. It was Dunning who called his study as the study of art of government rather than a theory of the state. Thus, the substance of his thought covers a much narrower field than Aristotle. But in this narrow field, his treatment of problems exhibit, in the words of Sabine, the shrewdest insight into points of weakness and strength in the political situation, the clearest and coolest judgment of resources and temperament of an opponent, the most objective estimate of the limitations of a policy, the soundest common sense in forecasting the logic of events and the outcome of a course of action. These qualities of Machiavelli made him a favorite with diplomats from his own day to the present. But these qualities are also associated with a possibility that the importance of the end would override the means. That is why his conceptions are expressed in terms like might is right, end justifies the means, necessity knows no law, etc. But his thoughts carry more important by what is understood by these terms. Next point is Machiavelli political thoughts. Out of his two most important works, The Prince is an analysis of political system of a strong monarchy, while the discourse is in Levers of the strong republic. In the first one, the main theme is the successful creation of a principality by an individual. In the other, it is the creation of an empire of free citizens. But in both, the center of his thought is the method of those who wield the power of the state rather than the fundamental relationship in which the essence of the state exists. He viewed things from standpoint of the ruler and not the ruled. Preservation of state rather than the excellence of its constitution were his main consideration. He writes of the mechanisms of the governments by which the state can be made strong and the politics that can expand their powers. He points out the error that bring about their downfall too. In the words of Sabine, the purpose of politics is to preserve and increase political power itself, and the standard by which he judges it is its success in doing this. He often discusses the advantage of immorality skillfully used to gain a ruler's ends, and it is this which is mainly responsible for his evil repute. But for the most part of he is not so much immoral as non-moral. A thing which would be immoral for an individual to do might, if necessary, in interest of state, is justifiably done by a ruler or a monarch. His indifference towards morality, therefore, can be explained in terms of political expediency. Machiavelli based his thought on two premises. First, on the ancient Greek assumption that the state is the highest form of human association necessary for the protection, welfare, and perfection of humanity, and as such, the interests of the state are definitely superior to individual or social interest. The second premise was that the self-interest on one form or another, particularly material self-interest, is the most potent of all factors of political motivation. Hence, the art of statecraft consists of the cold calculations of elements of self-interest in any given situation and the intelligent use of the practical means to meet the conflicting interests. Both these premises are reflected in his two books. Now the next point is concept of universal egoism. Another cardinal principle besides the principle of moral indifference, which forms Machiavelli's political philosophy, is the principle of universal egoism. He did not believe in the essential goodness of human nature. He held that all men are wicked and essentially selfish. Selfishness and egoism are the chief motive forces of human conduct. Fear is the one motivating and dominating element in life which is mightier than love, and the effective motive in him is desire for security, because human nature, moreover, is aggressive and acquisitive. Man aims to keep what they already have and desire to acquire more, and there are no limits to human desires. And all beings the same, there being a natural scarcity of things, there is everlasting competition and strife. Security is only possible when the ruler is strong. A prince, therefore, ought to personify fear. A prince who is feared knows how to stand in relation to his subjects and aims at the security of their life and property. Men always commit error of not knowing when to limit these hopes. Therefore, the only way to remedy this evil is to hold the opposing interest in maintaining an equilibrium between them in order to remain and maintain a healthy and stable society. These basic elements of human nature which are responsible to make him ungrateful, fickle, deceitful, and cowardly, along with their evil effects, were most prominent in Italy during Machiavelli's time. The corruption in all spheres was the order of the day, and all destruction of peace and justice and the growth of disorderly ambitions and dishonesty prevailed. The only way to rectify such a situation was establishment of absolute monarchy and despotic powers according to Machiavelli. Now we want to wind up this lecture. Thank you so much for your attention.